We'll come back to China later. Go ahead.
Yeah, just on this Brazil, Bolsonaro's visa, I understand you have restrictions due to privacy and all that, but can you confirm that an A1 visa would be valid for 30 days? And would an A1 visa assigned to anyone, head of state, would automatically become void if that person, that individual, is no longer a head of state?
Sure. So I don't want to try to guess at what your underlying question is, but let me just state out of an abundance of caution that I am, of course, not going to comment on the visa records of any individual. Individual visa records, as you know, are confidential, and we wouldn't speak to the status of any particular individual. Leaving individuals aside, and generally speaking, if someone entered the United States on an A visa, which is essentially a diplomatic visa for foreign diplomats or heads of state, an A visa holder, if an A visa holder is no longer engaged in official business on behalf of their government, it is incumbent on that visa holder to depart the U.S. or to request a change to another immigration status within 30 days. That request for a change in visa status would be made to the Department of Homeland Security. So it would be incumbent on the visa holder to take that action, either to depart the United States or to request that change in status.
Are you in a position to say whether the visa holder that we're all talking about?
I'm not talking about a visa holder.
Okay, fine. Are you able to say that you have received any request of change of status?
You haven't attached any names. I wouldn't comment on any individuals. I'm not commenting on any individuals. I'm commenting on a class of visa.
Can I attach a name to it? The current president, Lula, said yesterday after what happened in Brasilia that he believes that former President Bolsonaro bears at least some responsibility based on his past comments. Is that the same assessment of the United States? And if so, is former President Bolsonaro somebody who would be welcome in the United States?
President Lula has called for an investigation. There, as I understand it, is an ongoing investigation in Brazil. You heard from the president yesterday, you heard from the secretary yesterday, you heard from Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor yesterday, that we condemn this violence. Violence is never appropriate. It's never the answer. Brazil's democratic institutions have our full support, as we always are. We are standing by for any requests for assistance from our Brazilian partners, from Brazilian authorities, whether those come through diplomatic channels, whether they come through law enforcement channels, and we will, of course, respond to those requests as appropriate. The United States and Brazil, we are close partners. We work together day to day on any number of matters and issues, and oftentimes those are matters of law enforcement. We have well-honed processes in place to cooperate where requests are made for information or potentially for action on the part of Brazil to the United States. In this case, we have not yet received any requests for information or for action.
Leaving aside Bolsonaro personally, is there any concern that perhaps some of the plotting in this could have taken place in the United States and in Florida?
This will be a question for the Brazilian investigation. If it would be useful for Brazilian investigators to be in receipt of information from the United States government, we would, of course, adjudicate those requests promptly, as we always do, and provide them with appropriate information, but we haven't received such a request.
Just one more, a little bit more broadly. You've often spoken, and the president has often spoken about democracy being promoted around the world by the United States. So this is one of the major parts of the administration's agenda. Is there a bit of a concern at all that perhaps there's also another model in the United States, that being about January 6th, that of violent overthrow of democratic institutions? How much of a concern is that that's something that could also emanate from the United States, and what can the State Department of the administration do to counter that?
Well, what the world saw emanate from the United States yesterday was immediate, swift condemnation of what happened, what was ongoing in Brazil at the time. That was violence against Brazil's democratic institutions. What the world heard and saw from the United States yesterday was swift and immediate support for Brazil's democratic institutions. That message was loud and resoundingly clear. today. The world heard that from President Biden, from Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, from President Lopez Obrador of Mexico as well in their joint statement. So that is precisely what the world has been seeing and hearing from the United States over the past 24 hours. Of course, we've consistently made the point, including in the aftermath of events in this country, that every democracy has its challenge. It is a reflection of the strength of that democracy, how it grapples with, how it responds to those challenges. And speaking in the case of Brazil, we've seen remarkable resilience from Brazil's democracy over the past 24 hours. The violence was quelled within hours. The institutions were cleared of violent protesters within hours. Range of Brazilian voices from across the political spectrum have condemned it. President Lula addressed his people. We've heard Brazilian politicians from all parties and all stripes condemn this violence, as they well should. Anything else on Brazil? Yes, go ahead.
At least 4 American legislators, they asked the federal government, U.S. federal government, to do not allow the presence of the Brazilian former president Bolsonaro here in the country. From your perspective, can this fact generate a diplomatic incident in between the two countries?
No, because we have excellent cooperation with our Brazilian partners. As I said before, we on a daily basis work with our Brazilian partners through diplomatic channels, through law enforcement channels as well. And if there is a law enforcement matter that needs to be adjudicated between the United States and Brazil, we have well-honed, well-practiced processes for doing so, and we're prepared to do that. But as I mentioned before, we haven't received any specific requests just yet.
Regarding the new ambassador that she is swearing in a couple of minutes, from your perspective, what is going to be her main mission once she arrives in Brasilia, taking into account everything that happened yesterday?
Well, the main objective for any ambassador, any U.S. embassy anywhere around the world is really twofold. Number one, it is to provide steady leadership to our team, and we obviously have a very large mission in Brazil, encompassing a number of facilities. But also, this gets to the second charge, which is executing the president and the secretary's vision for that bilateral relationship. We also have a broad bilateral relationship with Brazil. It's a pivotal time in terms of U.S. Brazilian relations with the new government, with this government, eager to work with President Lula and his team. I think you have seen that in the early engagement we had with President Lula, with senior U.S. officials traveling to Brazil to meet with then President-elect Lula, with the conversations that have taken place between President Biden and others, and Secretary Blinken, and their Brazilian counterparts. There is a broad range of work that we want to accomplish, that we need to accomplish with our Brazilian partners. And when Ambassador Bagley arrives in Brazil, which I expect to be in the coming weeks, she'll be well positioned to help execute that vision.
Thank you.
Anything else on Brazil?
Just one more on the general question. So when you say that it's incumbent upon this visa holder to either leave the country or apply for a change in their immigration status, is that person precluded from getting another A visa because they're no longer head of state or no longer have that diplomatic status? What
Generally speaking, an A visa is reserved for someone who's engaged in official business in the United States on behalf of their government.
Right.
If that is no longer the case, it's incumbent on that particular individual to solicit a change in their status to a different kind of visa, whether that person may be eligible for a tourist visa, a business visa, or what have you.
By the way, it's...
But they can't, based on having previously had an A visa, they can't get another one as long as they're not the head of state.
Within 30 days of their official business ending.
I get that.
Yes.
I mean, what kind of visa could a former? All right, I am the president of Narnia. And I come Louisiana, eating at Popeyes, and then I am unelected. I am no longer what I have an A visa, I came in on an A visa. What kind of visa can I get to extend my stay?
So, Matt, it's really going to depend on the individual, as you know, because the visa process is unique to each individual. It depends on that individual's status, activities, what that individual is doing in the United States, what that individual may be doing in the United States. But I think you know the categories of visas as well as others. There are tourist visas, there are business visas, there are student visas. So I couldn't speak to a particular case, and I wouldn't speak to a particular case. But
So the whole range, other than an A visa, I could try to get anything else.
you could try to get any visa that is eligible for a
What
foreign.
happens if
What
the
happens if-
individual doesn't do either of those, doesn't leave the country and doesn't apply
Within that 30
within
days.
that 30 days?
So if an individual has no basis on which to be in the United States, an individual is subject to removal by the Department of Homeland Security.